Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. President Hassan Rouhani has said Tehran will not allow anyone to violate its borders. Speaking in Tehran, Rouhani said the presence of foreign forces in the Gulf poses insecurity for the region and oil industry. The Iranian president said Tehran will present a plan at the UN to secure the region with the help of the regional countries. Earlier, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has said war with Tehran will not be limited to the country's borders. In an interview, Zarif said any military action will have dire consequences for the Middle East and beyond. Saudi Arabia says it will take action against Iran if its involvement in the last week's attacks on Saudi oil fields is proven. Talking to media in Riyadh, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adil Al-Jubair, said Saudi Arabia is consulting allies on necessary steps. He said the attack disrupted global energy supplies. The minister said Riyadh has asked the United Nations to send experts to help with the probe. The UN has welcomed a proposal from the Yemen's Houthi rebels to halt attacks on Saudi Arabia. UN envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, says the rebels' initiative could send a powerful message of the will to end the war. The UN envoy called for taking advantage of the rebels' offer to reduce violence and military escalation. Earlier, the group pledged to stop attacks on Saudi Arabia if the coalition forces do the same. Speaking on the group's Al-Masira TV, head of the Houthi political office, Mehdi Al-Mashat, called for serious talks among all the stakeholders. The announcement comes after last weekend's drone strikes on Saudi oil installations reduced half of the kingdom's production. Yemen's civil war has killed 10,000 people and pushed millions to the edge of starvation. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says he will expose Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's fascism. Khan is in New York to speak at the United Nations General Assembly session. The Premier met a founder of the Kashmir Study Group, Farooq Kathwari, in the US and discussed occupied Kashmir crisis. He said Islamabad is highlighting New Delhi's illegal annexation of the valley's special status. During the meeting, Kathwari highlighted the group's engagement on Kashmir dispute and efforts for conflict resolution. Talking to media in New York, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Imran Khan is on Mission Kashmir in the US. Shah said the Prime Minister will meet several heads of the states, think tanks and hold media talks on the issue. Over 500 Indian academics and scientists have condemned New Delhi's lockdown in occupied Kashmir. In a statement, they called for an end to the undemocratic communications blackout and release of the arrested Kashmiris. The academics said students are unable to contact their families. They said the Indian government's decision to just open landlines has failed because it covers only 1% of the whole valley. They also sought a transparent investigation into violations of human rights in the occupied region. A flash mob depicting the plight of the Kashmiris stunned onlookers at a crowded shopping mall in Islamabad. This report has the details.
This is a well-known shopping mall in Islamabad. It recently became the stage for university students impersonating Indian Army soldiers. They aimed to recreate real stories from Indian-occupied Kashmir. These students tried to portray the daily sufferings of Kashmiris from the occupied valley.
I just want UN to be completely unbiased on this and to understand what Kashmiris are going through and just do what Kashmiris want.
Wife of the detained Kashmiri leader Yasin Malik also joined the theatrical performance. Talking to Indus News, Mishal Malik said Kashmir is a global nuclear flashpoint. She said if the situation in the subcontinent continues to aggravate, the entire world will suffer.
the oldest pending issue in the world's conflicts on the UN agenda is the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and it is the most crucial and chronic because it is also a nuclear ticking time bomb. It's an issue, if it aggravates, it's going to lead us towards what happened on February 27th when the nuclear codes were exchanged, and the whole world can be engulfed with this fire.
Malik said Kashmiris' basic human rights were being violated by the brutal Modi regime. She said the world needs to exert pressure on India for the resolution of the Kashmir dispute.
26 people have been killed as a passenger bus rammed into a mountain in Pakistan's northern Adiyami region. 12 others have been injured in the accident. Police said the vehicle was traveling from Skardu to Rawalpindi when it butted into a mountain at Babusar top. They said women and children are among the dead. They added rescuers had trouble reaching the area due to the difficult terrain. Moving on to Libya, where 18 people have been killed and dozens injured in heavy clashes south of capital Tripoli. LNA spokesman Ahmed al-Mismari said the army had launched a large-scale offensive against the government at Tripoli airport and the Kazirma front lines. Mismari said the 7 LNA troops were killed in the fighting along the airport road and dozens were wounded. Government officials said 11 of their soldiers were killed and many wounded in the south of the capital. Khalifa Haftar's forces launched a military operation to take over Tripoli and overthrow the UN-backed government in April. The fighting has so far killed and injured thousands of people and displaced over 120,000. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Turkey is ready for an operation along its border with Syria. Talking to the media in Istanbul, Erdogan said the US is providing arms to anti-Turkey Kurdish fighters. He said Turkey does not want to come to blows with the US but cannot overlook Washington's support to terrorists. Ankara and Washington agreed to establish a safe zone in Syria, clear of the Kurdish YPG fighters last month. The two countries also started joint land and air patrols along the parts of the border. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok has ordered the formation of an investigation committee of the 3rd June Khartoum massacre. Sudanese Council of the Ministers said the Independent National Investigation Committee will have 7 members. The council said members will include independent lawyers and members from the judiciary, defense and interior ministries. The rights groups have blamed Sudanese military for killing over 100 protesters outside army headquarters on June the 3rd. After months of turmoil, on August the 21, Abdullah Hamdok became the first civilian prime minister of Sudan since 1989. Hong Kong has imposed new curbs on rail travel ahead of the planned protests targeting the airport today. Hundreds of protesters have lined on roads in a hand-holding demonstration after a night of widespread violent street clashes. Protesters are occupying the airport arrivals hall and blocking approach roads in Tung Shung town. Hong Kong riot police have taken up positions at the main rail station to prevent a new anti-government protest. Transit authorities have closed 2 intermediate stations on the Airport Express train. The Hong Kong International Airport Authority said train will operate only between the airport and city's downtown.
We were aware that there were protests about midday today, yes.
It was in the paper.
That's why we came to the airport early, thinking that our flight was delayed, but it turns out it's been delayed till tomorrow.
China and the Solomon Islands have established diplomatic ties after the Pacific island nation ditched relations with Taiwan. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi signed an agreement with his counterpart Jeremiah Minale in Beijing. Minale said Solomon Islands has accepted one China policy.
We have aligned our policy with international law in compliance with the UN Resolution 2758. We therefore recognize the One China policy.
In Albania, 52 people have been injured after a 5.6 magnitude earthquake jolted the country. The defense minister said the epicenter of the quake was near the port city of Durrës. It said it was the most powerful quake to strike the country in 30 years. The ministry spokesperson said no deaths were reported following the quake. People came out in the streets in several cities as the quake damaged 10 buildings and triggered power cuts in the capital, Tirana. After the quake, Albania's Prime Minister cancelled his scheduled trip to the US. It's time for a short break, but coming up next in the Bulletin. Indigenous women still face discrimination. A rising population and climate change threaten wheat supply. Welcome back. Teenage environmental activist Greta Thunberg says young people are united in demanding action against climate change. Addressing a UN Youth Summit on climate, Thunberg said the worldwide protests held on Friday are just the beginning of the movement. Young Argentine activist Bruno Rodriguez said the climate and ecological crisis is the political crisis of this era. Addressing the summit, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said young people must ask the world leaders to preserve the environment for future generations. He said the world leaders talk too much but listen too little. The UN will host a climate action summit next week with many world leaders to discuss the issue of global warming. In Bolivia, native Andean people make up for half of the country's population. Indigenous women, known as cholas, have long been stigmatized for wearing the traditional clothes. More in this report.
The polera is a big and heavy garment made with up to 6 meters of cloth. The traditional skirt is a source of pride and empowerment for indigenous Bolivian women. But since President Evo Morales, an indigenous Bolivian himself, came to power, things have begun to change. The garment is now seen in offices and public spaces which had previously banned the garment.
Now with this anti-discrimination law, young women are getting back in contact with their roots and can really show off and wear their poleras.
The 2009 Bolivian constitution recognizes 36 official indigenous languages. A law passed in 2010 also prohibits and penalizes racism and discrimination.
They could tell you to leave a place after they pass the law. Nobody can remove you from a place, but you suffer a nasty moment. There is always someone who can approach you, as has happened to me, and they can say to you, for example, "It disgusts me that you're here."
Some people think prejudice persists in Bolivia due to illiteracy. According to a local activist and radio host, there isn't less racism in Bolivia today. Instead, bigots only express themselves in a different manner. For now, the debate around the polera continues. Local women stand by their traditional dress, saying it gives them the strength to claim what they are.
Wheat is a staple in diets the world over. Today, the crop's global supply is threatened by the rising population and climate change. Taking note of this, China has dedicated a team of scientists to increasing wheat production. This report has the details.
Chances are you have eaten a piece of bread today already, but few know wheat genetics are far more complicated than similar food items such as rice or potatoes. Its genetic code was unlocked a few years ago after years of research. Now scientists are trying to figure out new ways to increase its yield and nutritional value. In China, a team of scientists in the Shanxi province has been put to work to increase its resistance to disease and environmental damage.
After we deciphered this code book, we can further explore the life process of wheat from the molecular level to have an in-depth analysis of its growth, development, and its reproduction.
Right now, the scientists are trying to find high-yield wheat varieties which can adapt to a diverse range of environments.
With the genetic information, we will use the strategy of molecular design in wheat breeding to utilize the genetic information of wheat. In this way, we can design and breed according to meet our needs. In that case, we will have breakthroughs to have better nutrition, resistance, and quality of wheat.
China is the world's largest producer and consumer of wheat. Its wheat crop has been updated 7 times in the last 70 years. The scientists in Shanxi say there is still plenty of room for more innovation.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching Indus News. For further updates, stay tuned.